what is a chief ethics officer and what does that look like?
Well, I'm glad you like the name. They let me make up the name. And at the time, I was the general counsel of the company. And what I was spending some time doing as the general counsel was implementing an integrity program. And it all started, when I sat down with Brian Chesky one day, the founder, CEO of Airbnb. And, we were both seeing the articles about, the rascals and scoundrels. And in fact, there were, at that point, Me Too had just come out. And there were a lot of issues at Uber, and literally Uber is right down the street from Airbnb. And I think the companies both sort of grew up at the same time. So I love learning from other people's mistakes. So when I saw the Susan Fowler blog post that blew up Uber and all the problems they had, my first reaction was, we better be thinking about this because there's no reason why we're immune from these sorts of problems. So I went in to talk to Brian about it, and we got to the question, the philosophical question: how do you drive integrity into the culture of a company? And look, Brian and I didn't have the answers right away. I mean, I talked a little bit with Brian about how companies traditionally had done this. And, and I sounded silly as I was answering my own question. Things like, well, everybody's got a code of ethics, right? Yeah, and the code of ethics is something that most companies go online and steal from another company, and then they put their own company's name up at the top. And then they email it out to everybody and they say, check a box saying you've read this. Like, wow, that's probably not going to have much of an impact on the culture of a company, right? Or here's another one. Compliance poster. These are my favorites. Every company, I think, in the United States has got one of these things, and they're usually in the break room over in the corner where it's a little dark and there's some dripping pipes. And the font is 4-point font. So you can't really read it, but I don't know that it was actually made for anybody to read. But by law, you've got to have one up there. And it's everything you need to know, right, about doing the right thing. And the more I went through this sort of stuff, it struck me that this was compliance. But there's a difference between compliance and ethics, or compliance and integrity. Compliance is following the law to check the box so that you're following the law. Integrity is about doing the right thing because it's the right thing. So, that day, Brian sent me off with the words, go big. And what came out of it was an entire program at the company around integrity. And Brian came, I think 4 years later, Brian looked at me and said, didn't think it was possible to actually make ethics cool, but somehow, you've done it and the company's embraced it. And I think the idea of being a chief integrity officer or a chief ethics officer really is about getting a company to think about doing the right thing. And because it's the right thing, and quite honestly, because it's also the right thing for business. You mentioned this idea that, in the old days, people thought of business and integrity as mutually exclusive terms, and they would almost laugh when you put them in the same sentence. In reality, today, I think that's all turned. I think that a company cannot reach its full potential without driving integrity into how it operates. And so I think a chief integrity officer is someone that is focused on that aspect of business and driving that throughout the culture so that you can be the most successful business that you can.